Welcome to the Simply Love Jesus podcast, where we show you what it means to love God and love people. I hope you're having an amazing day. I hope you're having whatever week you're going through right now, whether it's good, whether it's bad. I just want you to know that I am so grateful that you are here. And my name is Caleb Davis, and I want to introduce all of our co-hosts here. We together are the Simply Love Jesus lead team, and there's a couple other people who work from distance, but these are the faces that you will see most often. This is our brand new relaunching of our podcast, and if you've been following our podcast for the past 4 years, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for following us on this journey, and I hope you're going to continue to stick with us in this new journey to come, in this new season that we are in. And to really just kick us off, again, we have some amazing co-hosts, and I just want to introduce everybody. So we have, I'm going to just go through names real quick. We got Olivia, we got Adrian, again, myself, Caleb, we got Durante, we got Jordan, and we have Leah. And I want to go ahead and just start us off with a simple, just get to know us opportunity. So starting with Olivia, what do you do for fun?
So I like to sing and play guitar for fun. And I'm also a movie buff, so I really enjoy watching.
What's your favorite movie?
Good movie. My favorite
Yeah,
of
your
all
favorite
time?
movie.
I'd have to say Avengers Endgame.
That's a good
Probably
movie.
like top tier for me.
That's
I can
good.
watch that
That's
multiple
good.
times.
What are y'all's favorite movies?
I would say I'll take the microphone. Yeah, we're passing back and forth. But I do like Avengers Endgame. That was a good one. I will say Avengers Endgame was the best in-movie experience, like theater experience that I've ever had.
For sure.
Just not knowing what was going to happen and all that happening and me talking in the microphone properly. We rehearsed this. But yes, that is a great movie. I like it.
Yeah, that's good. Adrian, what's your favorite movie?
The new Black Panther movie.
The which one?
The new Black Panther.
The new what?
Black Panther.
Oh, Lou back. I don't know why I thought you said
That
something
one I
totally
haven't seen
different.
yet.
I haven't seen.
Forever.
Yeah, Wakanda Forever. I haven't seen it
Wakanda
yet.
Forever.
I want
Super
to go
good.
see it.
Yeah.
Super good.
That's good.
Awesome.
That's good. Leah, what is your favorite movie?
I love Walk to Remember. It's actually a Christian movie.
That is
Like
a
Mandy
great
Moore.
movie. That is a sad movie.
It is a sad movie, but a good
That is a
movie.
very
It
sad
is
movie.
very sad. It is very sad. The end. Although very good.
Well, Adrian, what do you do
Highly
for fun?
recommend it.
What I do for fun is just take photos and I like to write poetry. So,
You like to write poetry?
Yeah.
That's right. That's true. You do like to write poetry. You like to read poetry.
Yeah.
In fact, you didn't know this, listener, but these two just got engaged. And Olivia, I'm not going to say it for you guys. You guys tell us the story real quick. Tell us the story of just how y'all got engaged and the whole poetry thing. It's just a beautiful story.
So basically, long story short, I thought I was going to a poetry event to watch this guy and be a supportive girlfriend. But all the while, behind the scenes, they had been planning for a couple months a collaborative poem. It's like a group poem with 4 other poets, was it?
Yeah.
4 other poets who did a group poem that was based kind of around our relationship. And I was watching him. He was the last poet to perform. And then he got on one knee and asked me to be his wife. Or asked me to marry him.
Yeah.
So, that was about 3 weeks ago, and probably one of the best days of my life because it was it was the biggest surprise I've ever had in my entire life. Like, when I say had no clue, I have a video on YouTube, so, but I was just like, everything went over my head, and now looking back at it, I see everything, but I mean, y'all, I was clueless.
My favorite part was the fact that you were like videoing it.
Yes, I was
So you
videoing
got-
my proposal and had no clue. Like, I'm like, oh, look at me being a supportive girlfriend. All the while, like, no, you're actually about to get proposed to. So it was great. It was so great.
Now, Adrian, how long were you planning that ahead of time? How long did you know that was how you wanted to do it?
oh, we all kind of pieced it together as it.
But like, how long before you actually proposed were you planning that out?
You talking about every detail or just the plan of it? Like 2 weeks after like my 30th birthday.
Oh, so how long was that until?
In September.
So it's about a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like
That's
2
awesome.
months, something like that.
Man, that's really cool. Durante, what do you like to do for fun?
So I just started playing D&D.
Really? With who? And why did you not invite me?
So I visited a couple of friends in South Carolina, and he's a dungeon master. And so he's been trying to get me to join his, what do you call it, a troop or group or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sure. So he made me a character. His name was Yester. And so I just joined in, and they were in Barovia, which is like a supernatural town. I think they're trying to find like a vampire or something like that. And I jumped in. In the end, I got killed.
Okay.
But I just like loved it. It was like, he's a really good dungeon master. He's really good at like kind of constructing the scenes and narrating what's happening and really like making it almost like a movie. So that's a new thing. I'm actually creating a new character to join the group. So that'll be cool. And then also I love movies, hanging out with my friends, stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Wait, what was your character?
My character was a warrior who was protecting a queen from a small hamlet. And we, along with the group, got ambushed by a bunch of werewolves and a dire wolf.
Wow.
And it turns out that the werewolf was my brother.
I love that. I love that. That's incredible.
That was really good.
Jordan, what do you do for fun?
That is awesome. So, I'm a personal trainer, so I really do enjoy any kind of exercise like hiking, any sort of workout. But if I really had to put it together, I would say I enjoy traveling. Leah and I just went on a road trip a couple weeks ago to Texas. And when I say travel, I don't mean like get on a plane and just go somewhere. I like the actual, I like the journey aspect rather than just like, okay, cool, I'm just going to get on a plane, sit there, watch some movies. You can watch movies on planes now. That wasn't a thing even 15, 20 years ago, and then just show up at your destination. I really do like the journey aspect of getting there as well.
That's really cool. What has been your favorite place that you have hiked?
That I've hiked. I actually did a lot of hiking last year. My uncle and I did a trip from all the way from Michigan all the way out to Washington State. So we did a lot of cool hikes there.
Wow.
Yellowstone was very cool. This is going to be a fun story. We almost ran into a grizzly bear twice.
Really?
Wow. So without bear spray at the time.
Oh,
so,
did you see it?
No, we actually didn't. That's the sad part. But no, we stopped off. We had just been driving for 5 hours and we made it into the park. We're finally like, okay, let's stop off and let's hike. That's kind of what we want to do here. So then we get off and there's this man that walks up and he says, you guys got to be careful back there. There's a grizzly bear I just ran into. So we were like, yeah, okay, let's get back in the car. We'll go find something else. Not worth it. So we drive a little bit further and we find like another trail that actually looks more legit, not just like some back roads. Like, okay, this is something that a lot of people probably do. So we go there and we see a sign, the big old sign that just says, warning, you need bear spray here. There are grizzly bears on this trail. So we said, okay, we better heed that warning and go get some bear spray. So another 5 minutes pass, we go in to get bear spray. And as we're walking back, there's this elderly couple that walks up, says, oh, you guys are bold if you're going to walk down that trail. We're like, why? She's like, literally, I just saw a grizzly bear 25 feet away from that sign that says warning grizzly bear. So that sign is true. There's actual grizzly bears there. So then we had our bear spray. We walked on another trail, but I was on edge the whole time, just prepared. When's a grizzly bear going to come in? Like totally, you're prepared to spray because if that happens, like I'm spraying it right in the eyes. That's what you got to do. And so I'm walking right behind my uncle and I hear him just scream, whoa. And I look up and I just see this big brown furry thing. Turned out it was an elk. Oh, but I was thinking bear. All right, I'm spraying the bear, but exactly. This is it. This is the showdown. But it was an elk and it was still staring at us like, get away from my food. But you know, a lot less terrifying than a grizzly bear for sure.
That's amazing.
But,
man.
Fun
Leah,
stuff.
what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah. Hey guys. So I'm more of like a right brain type of person, I would say. I love the arts. I love like, you know, just like art, photography. I love doing that. Dance. I started out doing ballet when I was younger.
Wow.
And I did point shoe for a long time. I think we've talked about this too, Olivia, as well. So yeah, you know, I love to travel. Like Jerome was saying, we do a lot of traveling together.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
And yeah.
What's your
praising God? What
has been your favorite place that you've traveled? And then where is one place that you haven't been that you would like to travel? So favorite place and then place you want to go.
Yeah, so definitely Australia. I have family there.
Oh, wow.
I've been to Sydney and Melbourne. And then a place that I would love to go to that I haven't been to yet would definitely be Japan. I'd love to go to Tokyo.
Yeah.
Japan, yeah. Jordan's really wanting to go there too. I love anime as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's kind of like the other thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I say, do y'all watch anime? Or,
I watch anime.
you watch anime?
Sailor
Olivia's
Moon.
the only one here who doesn't watch anime.
Sorry, guys.
No, she watches the basic anime, guys. She watches
is it,
Dragon Ball
Naruto?
Z.
No, I don't. I've never seen Dragon Ball.
No, listen, she hasn't watched it. Oh, she doesn't watch it currently, but she's seen it before.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Okay,
all
question
of-
though.
yeah, okay.
Question: Is Avatar: The Last Airbender an anime or no?
no.
I say it is a gateway anime.
Okay, that's fair. I actually like that explanation.
Close enough. It is not technically an
Yeah.
anime, but it is because it wasn't made in Japan and it doesn't have all the full like art style. But
Right.
it is. It
It's based
emulates
off of-
it.
yeah.
It emulates
Yeah.
it close enough that most kids who probably watch, like most younger kids who watch anime today, probably had started watching Avatar, and
Yeah.
because the shows they now love in anime, probably because of that. So that's why I say
Yeah.
it's a gateway anime.
Yeah.
That's the best explanation I can think of. So,
Now, what is everyone's favorite anime then?
all right, Leah, you guys
This is what
start
we
with
really
this
be
one.
telling about our personalities here.
Definitely Sailor Moon.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna say Death Note.
Okay.
Death Note is a good one.
Yeah.
I think currently it's slight tie for two. So it's Black Clover and also Jujutsu Kaisen.
Oh, Adrian.
Don't judge me, but Tokyo Ghoul.
Oh, I haven't seen
That's
that.
dope.
Yeah, I've seen it
Haneke,
from
man.
beginning to end. And Tokyo
Haneke's
Ghoul
dope.
is
My
nice.
favorite anime is the best anime because it's the longest running consistent anime is One Piece. Let's go. One Piece all the way. We're just getting crazy right now too. Wasn't expecting us to talk about One Piece, but here we are for anime. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. Anyways, so I hope you guys are having a wonderful time. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about us and our favorite anime.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that you may have tuned into this podcast, we know that all of you have different interests and we want to hear from your interests too. So if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments below what your favorite TV show is, your movie, what you like to do. I will just say what you like to do for fun. Just throw that in the comments below. The next thing that I really do want us to talk about is why we are here. Why we have come together, why we're even putting on this podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're watching this on social media or whether you're just listening on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or whatever, or Google Play or whatever you used to listen to podcasts. The reason we have come together is for a very singular and critical purpose. And that's that the church is divided. We have come together and we are having this show because the church is divided. For over 1,000 years, we believe that the church has been divided and you have been the collateral damage. For over 1,000 years, the church has been split apart and divided over issues. And as a result, people all over the world have felt the collateral damage of that division. Some of you watching this may have been Christians in the past and you may no longer identify as a Christian. Some of you may be a Christian right now and you're a little on the edge because it's a little crazy right now and it's been crazy for a while. Some of you may not even be Christians, but you still feel the damage. You may not even be Christians, but you feel the damage. And especially in America, the church has, for lack of better words, tried to control your life. There are people who are not Christians and have been forced by government to abide by a Christian worldview, even though you don't believe in Jesus. And that is not okay. You have been outcasted by people for the way that you live, for what you believe. simply because you don't believe in what Christians believe. And that is not okay. And that's why we are here. We want to find the followers of Jesus who truly want to show what it means to love Jesus and to love people. Jesus himself said that the most important verse in the entire Bible, the most important thing in all of Scripture from beginning to end, is actually two passages married into one greatest commandment, or as we talk about, one bestest command. And that is Deuteronomy 6:5, which is to love God with all of your heart, soul, and strength. And Leviticus 19:18, love your neighbor as yourself. And we know that so many of you can merely just look on your social media. You can look on a YouTube comment section. Scroll on Twitter today. It's getting crazy over there. You can see for yourself people who claim to follow Jesus, but they live like they're serving the devil. You have people who claim to follow Jesus who said the most important thing is to love God and to love your neighbor. But all you feel from them is hate. Christians who are called to give life. We are literally called to give life. And people all over the world, when they look at Christians, they feel death. In some cases, literally. You have preachers who literally advocate for killing people in LGBTQ community. Like, I can pull up, I'll throw it in the show notes if I need to. I'll literally pull up a clip of a pastor out in Texas who has I think he's got over 50,000 followers for his church. And he literally in the video said, you know what we should do with all the people in the LGBT community? We should line them against the wall and shoot them in the back of the head because that's what the Bible says. Wow. And if you don't like that, that's the Bible. This is straight up what he says. I'm not even exaggerating that. Okay. There are people who follow that and say amen to that. That is not a Christian. And there are too many Christians who are too scared to say the truth. We are not going to be scared to say the truth. We are not going to be afraid to just say what needs to be said. Those people who cast death instead of life are not Christians. The person who tries to use the scripture, the pastor who tries to use the Bible and kill you with it and force you to live according to something that you don't even believe. And if that's not okay and they just want to throw hellfire and damnation upon you, that person's not a Christian. And I will gladly say that with full conviction, and I can back that up with scripture. And so we are tired of living in a world where we're supposed to be part of a church that for all of us, because we're all younger people, we all grew up being told to love God and to love your neighbor. We were told that Christians are about giving life. Christians are about showing love and joy and peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And yet now we grow up and you have all these people who are just so angry and just clawing at each other, but do not realize that they are literally I don't even know what's the word I'm looking for. They are just captured. They're captured. It's deeper than captured. It's imprisoned by death. And that overflows out of them. And then all of a sudden, when we start speaking out and say, no, we're supposed to be life givers. And they say, well, you're just a liberal. Really? We've grown up our entire lives telling us what it means to be a Christian and what the Bible says. And we love the Bible and we know what the Bible says and what it teaches us to be and who we're supposed to be. And the moment that we actually start doing that, then suddenly you have all these people around the world and all these older generation people, or not even just older generation, that's unfair to say it like that. But you have these Christians all over the world who suddenly that's not Christian anymore. And if you don't believe exactly what your good old faithful preacher says on the pulpit, and you don't believe exactly what he says, well, then you're just going to hell. Like, you have people who think like that, who talk like that. We've all encountered that. You've encountered that most especially. You see them on the street corner with picket fences and bullhorns, and they don't emulate the love and the life that God gives. And that, man, if you get to know me, there's one thing that you will know. And I'm pretty sure all of them, these guys can testify to this. There is only one thing in this world that makes me triggered and will get me angrier. The only time I really throw my anger at something is when Christians who claim to believe in Jesus do not live how Jesus intended for us to live. When Christians who are supposed to give life instead throw death. That is the only thing where I really throw out my anger. But you have all these other people who think that they're close to God, and yet their idea of righteous anger is being mad that you don't believe what I believe. It's not about, well, you're throwing death. It's just about the fact, well, you don't read the Bible the way I read the Bible. They think their idea of righteous anger is that you, a person who doesn't follow Jesus, isn't living how Jesus told Christians to live. And they think, well, I can get angry about that because that's righteous. No, it's not. You want to talk about righteous anger? Every single time Jesus God had righteous anger was against the very people who claim to follow God. So I've gone on a rant for long enough. I want to take a moment because each of us have stories. You, as you're listening to me speak, you probably know of people in your mind, experiences that you have, and stories that you have experienced of people who have claimed to believe in God, people who have claimed to be part of the church. And yet the church, which is called to give life instead through death. Many of you watching this or listening to this have stories like that. And we are no exception. And so I want to give a moment to let each of our incredible co-hosts, our incredible team here to share just their stories. And I'm going to just let them share with you. So we'll start with Olivia, and then we'll work our way around this way.
Hey guys. So I come from a Baptist church background, and I'm still currently in Baptist world. So, but my story, as far as like the issues that I found in the church, that has definitely brought me to a conclusion like that something is wrong, was a prior church that I used to go to. As of 2021, I stopped going to this church, so last year. But I was experiencing a lot of what I felt like was not the redemptive and the grace side of Jesus. So we're a Bible-believing church. We believe in the full scripture. And the way that the scriptures were taught, in my opinion, were very more political than they were about Christ's love. And they geared and targeted towards the fact of not Jesus, but more of that things such as homosexuality or abortion or, not getting married before, living together, whatever the situation. It was very, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You're kind of terrible if you do this. This is not of God. But there was no grace extended. So it was kind of cringy sitting in the congregation of a church that I've been to for a majority of my life and hearing this, and even just thinking of the possible people in that congregation sitting there who may struggle with those things or may know someone who struggles. And there was no grace or the love of Christ shown in their direction. And even as somebody kind of as an outside looking in, because I don't personally struggle with those, but I do have a lot of friends and family who do, it was like, man, I would not want them to be here right now. You know what I mean? And I think that was the sad part about it, is just like, of course you want to invite people to church with you, because that is, like you said, Christians, we're supposed to be life-giving. But when it comes to a point where you're like, ooh, I wouldn't invite my friends to this. It's like, what does that say about your church? What does that say about what they're teaching and how they're teaching? Is this really of Jesus? You know, even though we say we're a Bible believing church, are we really interpreting the scriptures the way Jesus like wants us to see it and walk in it? Or we're coming from our own political view or opinion or whatever that looks like. And so it started to bother me a lot, and it really started to mess with my heart. And, you know, I felt a lot of conviction just from the Lord that it was kind of time for me to move elsewhere. And it was a hard transition leaving that church because, like I said, I'd been there majority of my life and been on leadership there. And so it was a hard transition, but I knew it was best for my spiritual growth and health because that was not where I was growing. And I definitely did not believe what they were saying, and nor would I invite someone to hear that, and Christian or non-Christian, to be honest. So I wouldn't, if I can truly say, I wouldn't invite someone to my church, or hold on, let me see what they're preaching about first. You know, then I feel like that's a red flag. And I definitely was like, I'm not trying to be a part of any community where I don't even feel like confident in someone else coming and inviting someone else to come and hear it. So that's my testimony, church testimony.
Have you seen that? Because that was at the church that you used to go to. Was it like growing up? You said, or so. Have you seen that? Because you've obviously gone to different churches outside of that. Have you seen that as like consistent in multiple different churches, or do you feel like your church was like this like extremist like point of view, or was it more like, I don't know, just like talk on that a little bit?
I don't feel it was very, to me, it was very subtle.
Yeah.
Like just
which is sometimes where some of the greatest damage is done.
Yes, it's just that subtle twist, and you looking back at it, I felt like it took me a while to open my eyes to it. But once my eyes were open to it, I couldn't unsee it. Yeah. And I heard it in every single sermon. So it started to really like mess with me. But yeah, like you were saying, I did see it in other churches. It was different because the demographic was a little different. Yeah. And how they used it.
But the subtlety was there.
But the subtlety was still there. Yeah. And so I can gratefully say that I'm a part of a church that I absolutely love and invite anyone to, because that's not what we do.
Yeah. Now, and why do you think, you say you went to like all these different churches and you saw the subtleties were consistent in these, a lot of different churches? Because here's the thing, and here's something I want to say right out of the gate, that not every church is bad.
Right.
Like you're going to hear us talk a lot about some stuff in the church, but there are a lot of great churches and a lot of great pastors. And we're going to talk more about that soon. But like going back to like, you saw these consistent subtleties. Why do you think that is? Like, no matter, even if the demographic was different, why do you think that you see these subtleties were consistent? If you've thought about that before, I don't know.
I honestly haven't thought about that, but just in my own opinion, I think a part of it was, I think it's just like tradition and how they like grew up.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
No one was broken of that. No one was, I mean, it was just like it honestly felt like this is what my great grandfather taught me. You know, without them saying that, it felt that energy of like, you know, which was passed down from generation.
Which is an important note, because people tend to use the word tradition a lot. But I think what's not being spoken when they talk about, well, I think that's just because tradition, that's how we've done it. There's deeper in that. It's approval.
That's good.
It's, if I don't say this, I don't have the approval of great grandpappy who was pastor. And that's what he taught me to say. I don't have the approval of pastor down the street who I get lunch with, and he preaches like that. Or my seminary professor. And that's what they taught us to teach, or what was right or what was wrong. It's, I do it not because this is what Jesus expects of me, but because this is the approval I will get from my peers. Sorry, I just hit me while you were talking and you were saying that. Anyways,
that's good.
That's good. That's a good story. Adrian, you're up next, man.
Well,
the wise sage that he is.
The wise sage.
The wise
really. Not a sage or a wizard, just I guess for me it was the fact that when I grew up in my older I went to a Baptist church, but the older Baptist church I went to, growing up in the small town of Georgia that I went to, it didn't emphasize enough about who the Holy Spirit was, or so much as so I guess like what I took from it. It wasn't necessarily hurt. It was more so I guess neglect. So I guess those two go hand in hand. But it was more so like not the importance of mental health and emotional health once I become aware of like, how I'm wired and what I'm going through. And then telling people like, hey, like I'm going through this, or I'm going through this mental thing, or I'm going through this emotional thing. Like they give you the spiritual, but they don't give you so much the practical side of it. Especially the older traditional ones, they just pray through it. It's like, okay, yes, that is correct.
How often have we ever heard that? Just pray through it.
Like that's number one. Pray through it, but also what else? What is next? The practical spirituality comes with practicality as well. So two go hand in hand. Also, because somebody can read the Bible day in and day out and still go commit sin, which is watch pornography right after they just read a Bible verse. And they consistently call them, consistently they are Christians, they read the Bible, they fast, they go to everything else. But what else do you say when, they fall to pornography or they cheat on their wife? Like, so those are decisions that you can make on your own. But I'm saying like the application part was not there. And then once I realized that I was going through all of that, them not just feel like I don't have like any guidance after that, because then that led me to question God, because I'm like, okay, I'm reading my Bible, I'm praying, what else is I'm not doing? And I feel like if it was something like where they had, Christians that were also, if the preacher knew how to also be a counselor, if that wasn't make sense, because I believe that most preachers are supposed to do that, but I feel like sometimes they just come with the spiritual advice and not know what the mental aspect of it is, and how God actually does care about your emotions, and how he doesn't see us how we see ourselves, like as dirty. He sees us clean, and using scripture to heal those wounds and provide healing for us. So I guess that was my thing of like, everything is divided. And then with the and then when 2020 happened, everything with the emotional side, but also with them not addressing everything that was going on racially, they would try to either do two things: make it too much about race, and then just every sermon would be about that, and not be too much of any Jesus, or they just wouldn't say anything about it at all. My thing of it is like, you don't have to feel like you have to include it in there, but speak about it, because God, Jesus flipped tables over things that they were doing in the church. And the church is supposed to be the example to the church that is planted in a community. You're supposed to look at the 10 to 5 mile radius of the households that are around there and see how they're impacted. And if they're not being impacted, then the church is not being successful, because the church is supposed to go beyond the four walls. And I felt like 2020 was exposing the church, and the government is not supposed to be leading in charge. The church is supposed to be leading charges for us, like setting an example of how to love people. Letting people know that they're loved by God, no matter where they come from, their religion, their creed, and we're supposed to give life and not slice them with our tongue and how we feel. And that's what made me know that things have to change and simply love Jesus.
Yeah, you mentioned 2020 and all the stuff that was happening throughout, and that big tension of some people either not talking about it at all, or when they did talk about it, they tended to make it about, how would you categorize that? Like
it seemed forced. It seemed forced.
And in which ways did you find how they talked about it? Like,
I feel like
it tended to either go one or two ways how people talked about it. What do you think those two ways were?
I think the two ways where they were gonna force it into it's, for example, the same way Target and all these brands switched up when 2020 happened, saying, "Oh, we're gonna be inclusive. We're gonna start doing all of this." It's like, but why do you care? Like before this all happened, you weren't doing this. So it was the way that it came about. It's like, okay, now that it happened, it was kind of like it was the same mentality they would use to push the Bible in your face. Now they putting like racial reconciliation in your face. It's like, okay, don't make it all about that. Like it. I don't know how to explain it. It just
sometimes it feels like, are you saying this because you just now realize that it's a thing, or are you just saying this to appease the people because it feels like it needs to be said? Like what if you were saying this because it needs to be said, will you admit that you just now realized this because you haven't talked about it before?
Yeah, like just the realization of just being vulnerable and just being like, hey, I'm human. We should, as a church, we should have done better. And just like you said, just addressing that and just let the ball roll from there. Yeah.
Or there's also the flip side of it, which is how many people used it and spoke about it on stage, not from a conviction of their heart, but from a manipulation of their politics.
Yeah. Exactly. For sure.
And there's so many people out there, Christians, even pastors, where their theology is more influenced by their politics than it is their Bible. Yes. And we see that right today. I think the silver lining of the climate that we are in right now as a nation in America. And before I forget, I want to thank, we're actually sitting in, what are the names one more time?
Ben and Allie.
Ben and Allie. Allie?
Natalie.
Why did I say Allie? When I was in high school, I went to a lot of death metal concerts, okay? So I'm not using it as an excuse for my hearing problems. Yeah. I'm just saying back then I knew what I was getting myself into, and I'm paying my dues. And so we are in, which is Adrian's roommate, Ben. So they're letting us use their apartment to film this podcast for you, and you can see their cute little pictures up here. Like, ain't that adorable?
They're cute.
And the water buffalo, or well, I guess it's not a water buffalo, but
no, it's a cow.
It's a cow.
It's some kind of cow.
That's a cow?
Some kind of cow. Yeah.
I just like,
It's like from a different.
Okay.
It's another continent.
I got off topic. Sorry. I just want to make sure I said that because, I just want to, and also before I forget while I'm on this track, I want to give a big thanks to our cameraman for this evening, Mr. Ben Dutton. Ben, do me a favor, just like shake the camera up and down. Cause I know if I asked you to get in front of the camera, you'd say no. Unless you want to, I want you to come around. And, okay. Yep. Real quick, Ben, what do you do for fun? Just yell it out.
I film things, yeah.
Louder.
I film things.
Yeah.
There we go.
You also play a lot of Super Mario Smash Bros.
Yep.
Oh, and also
and a lot of Pokemon. A lot of Pokemon, actually.
Oh, really?
Trading cards.
I'm a loser. I'm a nerd.
You're not. You're my favorite. All right.
Yeah, Ben is very talented.
He is very talented. He's also a great musician, and so I want to make sure to give a shout out to him as well. But anyway, so going back to what we were talking about, you have these people when they talk about it, it's so influenced by their politics and not as much influenced by scripture,
or love for people,
or love for people. Dante, you're next, man.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of ironic that I'm sitting here because I think 2021, actually 2019, I had said I would never enter a church again.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you're about to. Tell us more about that, like you weren't already about to.
So I didn't grow up in church like many of you. I had a relationship with God, though. I talked to him every day, and as a kid, it just kind of came naturally. But I never grew up in a space where there was church culture. And so my faith and relationship with God was kind of built through my mom and other people in my life. But again, there was never really a culture that I grew up around. And then early on, maybe like when I was 18 or 19, I found a small church actually in Southwest Atlanta, near Camilton Road. Shout out to all those people. And they really did a good job of like kind of pouring into me. But even there, I saw that there were certain issues and things like that that stuck out to me. But they did care about me. And I left that church remembering that. And then I went up to upstate New York. If any of you ever grew up there, you'll know there's not really a church culture there. It's very intellectual, very agnostic, atheist. And so I didn't have a space to really kind of feed my spirit. And so I came out of that, going to Boston and hoping that I could find a church community. And that really wasn't the case. For a long time, I didn't really have anyone to talk to Jesus about. And I remember praying to Jesus and asking him, I was like, I just need someone to talk to you about, because I don't have that. And so basically 2017, I got diagnosed with major depression, major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety. And things got really rough after that. And I was like, I need a community. And so I found the Catholic Church. And when I was confirmed, I felt this calling to enter the past kind of like pastoral calling. And I was like, maybe I should be a priest. I talked to the priest and I was like, hey man, I want to be a priest, but I love women. So I don't know if those two things are going to go hand in hand. And he was like, yeah.
Brother Durante. How
And so he was like, yeah, let's talk. And I think 3 months passed and I did everything. Like he would see me at communion. I would say, hey, can we talk? He's like, yeah. And so eventually it got to a point where I just came up to him at the end of Mass and I was like, hey, can we talk? And can I have your personal phone number if that'll be easier to just connect with you? And he just snapped on me. And especially like being in such a dark space at that time, it felt very isolating for me, a person who was trying to like step into the priesthood and to really kind of feel a divine calling to have someone in that type of authority, especially spiritual authority, and someone who has the name Father to like treat me in that way. And after,
do you know why
I don't know. I never asked. I didn't, I didn't return to the church after that, but I did notice like a lot of our wealthy parishioners, especially those who are older and white, they got his time all the time. And so maybe it was because I didn't have anything to offer, which is something that I think we kind of see in our larger church culture, both in the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church.
Oh yeah. Celebrity church culture.
Yep.
Which is a whole nother thing we're going to talk about.
And yeah, he was pretty well known. So that was the kind of like the first part. And the second part is I went to another church community, the Seventh-day Adventist community. Again, just trying to find people to talk about Jesus with and worship. And they poured into me for a while, but I was dating a person there and we broke up. And again, that community kind of closed me out. And so after that, I was just like, I don't think this kingdom or church that Jesus talks about is real. And so I was like, I'll never go to church again. And if I want to be a pastor, I can just figure out another way to do it or just start my own church.
Can you talk just a little bit more about that last moment you said where after you've had these experiences, we're like, I don't know if God's kingdom is real. Why? Can you talk a little bit more about what you feel like makes that correlation and that connection? Because I think it will speak a lot into some other people who may be feeling the exact same way, but don't know how to articulate it,
Yeah. So if we think about the third commandment that God gave the disciples, it was to love each other as I have loved you, so that the world will know that my Father sent me. And so that was the thing I was looking for in the church, and that was the thing that was missing, because love seemed conditional.
Yeah.
However, what Jesus through Christ was asking us to do was to love unconditionally in grace and in hope and faith. And that I just hadn't seen that. I didn't see it in the Catholic Church. I didn't see it in the Protestant church.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also like the race stuff. Like when I moved to Atlanta, there were a lot of churches who just weren't addressing the issues that we have with white supremacy and racism in America. There were churches that weren't addressing the LGBTQ community well, right? And condemning them in hatred versus actually having a dialogue.
Yeah.
And so there's this, like, I kept on seeing things that kind of perpetuated this idea that the church is not a safe space. The church is not a loving space. And I'm sure many of you have felt this way before. The church is a space where really, I think, at the time, evil kind of rests in. And so that drew me away from trying to integrate into that space.
Well, I think it's such an important thing that you note, because you said one of the primary reasons because you didn't see any evidence of that thing that you were looking for. Mm-hmm. The reality is, if we were doing any other subject, science, history, if you're just looking, even politics, it doesn't matter. If someone makes a theory or claim, but you don't see any evidence of that being true, if you don't see any evidence to support that claim or that theory, you would say, that's nice that you wrote that down, but it's not real.
Right.
That's how science works, right? Someone comes up with a hypothesis, but if the evidence that they have found does not support that theory, then it's not science. It's not consistent. And yet somehow we place these, it's because we're all sinful people.
Yeah.
Well, it's all because we're not perfect. Well, doesn't matter. No. It doesn't matter. All right. The reality is Jesus said that when he's talking about false teachers, but this also applies to his followers as well. He says bad trees cannot produce good fruit, and good trees cannot produce bad fruit. Mm-hmm. So every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut off and thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Trees. That is not a message. Originally, the original direct context of that, Matthew chapter 5, he's talking about preachers. Mm-hmm. He ain't talking about your regular person who don't believe in God. He's talking about preachers. Mm. He's talking about, and by extension, he's talking about believers. Mm-hmm. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to. Thank you for expounding upon that, because I think there's so many people who feel that.
Yeah.
Jordan, tell us your story about that glorious beard.
Real quick before I go into my story, I do want to even talk about what Durante you were just talking about, how I think all of our stories talk about a lot of judgment in the church. Now, how many times has somebody that you don't know comes up to you and tells you you're living your life the wrong way? How many times are you just going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, I am. Let me just listen to you. Like, because that's a lot of how a lot of churches do go about trying to quote unquote convert people into Christianity. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
And where do you see this most often? Who do we see this first reflected in?
In the church?
Well, in the church, but who do you most often interact with growing up?
Your parents? And that's true, because a lot of times when your parents tell you, oh, don't do this, don't do this. And as soon as you turn 18, you move out of the house, what do you want to do? Like, I literally, and I'll tell you this, I actually made a list of all the movies my parents didn't let me watch growing up. As soon as I went to college, I watched them all. I hope my parents are watching this.
Granted, I have met all of your parents. I think I've met your parents. Have I?
Actually, I don't know. That's a good question. We need to set that up.
Yeah, we do. Because I've met Leah's parents.
They live close to each other.
I've met all of your parents. I've met my parents, obviously. I know for a fact we can all say we love our parents.
Yes.
But, and I say this for the sake of those who are watching, because the people they most interact with is their parents. And oftentimes, for many people who were once Christians who are no longer Christians, they step away from the faith and they blame it on the church. But really behind the blaming on the church is really how the church was reflected in their parents. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Anyways, go on with your story.
And honestly, I think that it is, yes.
I really like that.
Do you want to speak more on that? You can speak more on that if you want.
But I really do think that that point that you made is a good segue into my story, because my parents actually took me to a Baptist church growing up. And when I say growing up in the church, it wasn't like as soon as I was born, my parents were already going to church. They actually weren't going to church the first, I want to say 6 or 7 years of my life. And then all of a sudden, a neighbor actually invited my parents to this Baptist church. And then all of a sudden, it was like, all right, well, we're going to be doing this every single Sunday. We're going to be going to church. And, I just kind of accepted it. I was 7. So, I went through that Baptist church all the way until I graduated from high school. And I never really felt... I will say from the pastor, I never really felt any sort of judgment, but I did kind of feel that that vibe in the community of like, God's always watching and you need to do the right thing at all times. And you just kind of use that to strike fear into you.
And that's where the subtleties that Olivia was talking about come in, because, people will say, well, I never felt like, you just said this, just direct quote. You're saying, well, I never really felt this like from the pastor, but I started feeling that vibe from the community. Mm-hmm. That's a result of the pastor's teaching.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just important because you may have not felt that directly from them, but this is why and this is how, this is a phrase you'll hear in the Bible, the yoke of the teacher. A yoke is in Jewish Jewish discipleship in first century Israel. A yoke was a rabbi's teaching. So this is why you see in the New Testament, do not be unequally yoked. And you'll see, take my yoke is easy and light. My burden is light. So it says teaching. It is the thing that is all that they are, and their teaching and what they believe and everything. And so you see that reflected in the church community, because as a result of how the pastor has pastored or what he has taught. And I would equally say this for the churches that you have gone to, where you do see truly amazing people, a truly loving community. So when you're in a community, if you're in a church that you truly feel life and you don't feel like it's not about you're being subjugated and your life being micromanaged and all these things. If you truly feel like I feel like I know when I mess up, I can tell these people. And if you're in a community where you feel like you've messed up and you feel like I can actually tell these people, I don't feel the inherent pressure, and that pressure forces me to not say anything because of inherent shame I'm afraid of having been thrown upon me. Do your pastor a favor and send him an email and thank him, because he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders or her shoulders, or so whoever your pastor is, thank them, because there's a lot of pressure on pastors. And there's a lot of bad pastors out there, but there are also some incredible pastors out there. So, but anyway, sorry to interrupt, but keep going.
No, that was a fantastic point, because I really did feel that throughout the church. Like if I ever had any kind of doubt about what the church stood for, or any temptations to do anything wrong, I just felt like I could not bring that up anywhere in a small group to anyone, or I felt like I would just be judged and kind of shunned. Now, once I went off to college, I didn't completely just immediately reject Christianity. I actually joined a Christian group at my university, and was like, okay, I'm just gonna attend this group once a week. It'll be similar to church. I'll keep that going, because I still do believe and I do want to still do the right thing. However, it was about maybe a month or so into going to this youth group. Youth group, youth group. I always think of like, 13-year-olds, but I was 18 at the time. But I was bringing up some questions, or kind of had some doubts in my mind, because now I'm living in college, and now I'm, not just living under my parents' supervision in that sense. So there was a lot of people just with different opinions. Maybe I don't believe in God, or I come from a different religious background. So I started having some doubts, and the only thing that they brought up was, I want to say it was Romans 9:10, just saying, who are you to defy what the Lord says?
Romans 9.
Romans 9. I don't have the verse right in front of me.
Yeah,
but essentially talking about like, if you have any kind of doubts, well, that's just because you don't know what you're talking about, because you're not God. Which I mean is a great verse in context, but not to use for that purpose.
Well, and the context of that passage is more talking about, it's a whole passage really about the sovereignty of God,
right?
But it's more talking about actually I'll just pull it up and read it for you.
Let's pull it up, yeah.
Let's be good Christians. The context of it is more talking about the direct quote that you're speaking about is when it's talking about the creator and the created.
Correct.
And it's talking about who, can the clay say to the potter, or can the pot say to the, what is the potter?
I think the clay say
the clay
to the potter.
say to the potter, why have you made me this way? But who are you to speak to who are you to speak to whatever? So in Romans 9, it goes into there we go. So it's, well then, starting in verse 19, Romans 9:19. Actually, we'll go back to 17, where it says, "For the scriptures say that God told Pharaoh, I have appointed you the very purpose of displaying my power in you and to spread my fame throughout the earth." So you see, God chooses to show mercy to some, and he chooses to harden the hearts of others, so they refuse to listen. Well then, you might say, why does God blame people for not responding? Haven't they simply done what he makes them to do? No, don't say that. Who are you, a mere human being, to argue with God? Should the thing that was created say to the one who created it, why have you made me like this? When the potter makes jars out of clay, doesn't he have the right to use the same lump of clay to make one jar for decoration and another to throw garbage into? And this passage has often very been misused because it misses the context of what Paul is talking about here. People often use this as a very like shame casting thing. Like, well, who are you to speak back to God? God can use you for it. He can harden your heart. He can show mercy upon who he shows mercy, and all these things. But it misses the dramatic context of we'll get into a whole nother day, but the short version is that God so often, yes, can show mercy on whom he shows mercy and harden the hearts of those whom's hearts he wants to harden. But the reality is he always puts the option in front of them.
Right.
And most of the time he shows mercy anyways. Mm-hmm. Like oftentimes, like how many times did he threaten Israel? And he would say, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. You'll be destroyed. But then they don't get destroyed. Because he shows mercy. So it's a whole nother thing that you can get into. But yeah, it's a passage that is often very misused, like you experienced.
Oh yeah, I was a prime example of that. And it was pretty much from that moment, I just kind of dropped everything. I stopped going to that group. I was like, yeah, okay, if that's the church's only rebuttal against my objections, then, this is kind of a free pass for me to go do all those things that I wanted to do. Like, all right, now I want to go experience drinking. I want to go experience all these, the things that the typical college life, so to speak. And I pretty much did that all 4 years of college. Had no desire to go back to church. I did have sometimes meet up for coffee with some of those people in the group, and they tried to bring me back, and I was like, I'll think about it. But I just kind of had this wall up at that point that I don't want to go back to church because, I always just felt this judgment, and now I feel control. I feel free. Yeah. It wasn't until around 2019, I want to say, that I started hanging out with some friends that went to a church, and, they were really accepting and fun to hang out with. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, you should come to church with me. All of a sudden that wall's back up there. I don't know about church, but, we could go do anything else, go to lunch or something like that. And eventually after enough times, I was like, all right, fine, let's go try out church. Why not? You guys are cool. Like, we'll probably just hang out. Why not? And then once I walked into this church, I actually felt just acceptance. I felt like, wow, everybody is just very down to earth, and they're just there loving Jesus and not trying to tell you what you're doing is wrong, not trying to change your lifestyle, but just truly like coming from the word and loving Jesus. And I honestly hadn't experienced that before to that degree. So that's what really, after going there for a couple months, it really did make me reevaluate my life and say, this is what I needed to hear. I needed people that, they didn't come to me immediately and say, you need to go to church. They initially said, hey, let's be friends and hang out. And then invited me to church. Yeah. And I think that was just a much better approach, and it worked out,
Yeah. That's incredible. Before I forget, because I just like, as I was reading the passage in Romans 9, I could hear in the back of my head the amount of people who are probably listening to the very words, and I want to clarify something really quick. Contextually, because I already know I can you sometimes you hear something, someone brushes over it, and you're gonna think about that the rest of the time. So I know the moment I just read these words, because I read them kind of fast, seemed like I kind of breezed over it, but there is actually some heavy words in here that if read out of context sounds really bad. So I'll go back to this passage again. And I just want to, and I won't talk about it long because it's not the focus of the episode, but I just know people are going to hear it and they're going to think to themselves or whatever. So I want to clarify that right now. Going back 17, for the scriptures say that Pharaoh, I have appointed you for the very purpose of displaying my power in you and spread fame throughout the earth. So you see, God chooses to show mercy on some, and he chooses to harden the hearts of others so they refuse to listen. So many people, when they hear this, well, then you might say, why does God blame people for not responding? Haven't they simply done what he makes them to do? Then he says, no, who are you? And you're human to argue with God. Should the thing that was created say to the creator who created it, why have you made me like this? When a potter makes jars out of clay, doesn't he have the right to use the same lump of clay to make one jar for decoration and another to throw into the garbage? When you read that, the average person might think this just applies to anybody. So when they look at their own life, if their life has fallen apart or whatever, and they think well, does that mean, my life's just falling apart because God just decided to throw me in the garbage? And this is the thing that I really want you to pay attention to. In verse 17, for the scriptures say that God told who? Pharaoh. Who was Pharaoh? What's this in reference to? Moses, Exodus, right? Mm-hmm. All right. What is happen in Exodus? Who are the main people at play here? Moses, the Hebrews. Yeah. And what were the Hebrews at this time? They were slaves, okay, to Pharaoh. And was their slavery like nice, wonderful, kind, whatever kind of thing? No, it was what we typically associate as slavery. It was brutal and it was harsh. This is why early in the 1800s, this is where you have there was a lot of, in the African-American church, early in the 1800s, and you still hear this as a reflection today, a lot of times Black churches will go back to Moses. Because that goes all the way back. They did in the 1800s as well. It's where a lot of the songs that were sung to comfort slaves and all of these things, because of the harsh slavery that they were being treated to. And so, in short, for those who may be wondering how to put Romans 9 into context, Romans 9 is very much talking about, and I'll just interpret this for you. The short version is that the hearts of the people who God hardens to show his power are people who have given themselves over to the mark of the beast. And that's another concept we'll talk about later on, the whole mark of the beast thing, because there's a lot of Baptists whatever. The Revelation minds go freaking out and they think it's all cryptic messages when it's not. So that's a whole nother thing we'll talk about later. But this is talking about people who have literally sold themselves to their selfish nature, is Pharaoh just an average Joe? No, who was Pharaoh? He was the most powerful guy in their world at the time. He was, at least in the Hebrews world, he was the most powerful guy. The purpose who has sold themselves over to evil so much that they now have amassed power and use that power to oppress other people and subjugate other people. They have sold themselves over to that evil. And so God hardens their heart because that is the path they have set for themselves and have chosen that path. Right, so he uses their destruction for his glory. Yep. So that's, okay, sorry. Put that in context for people who wanted to put that to rest. All right, sorry.
Yeah, that was good clarity.
Leah, please tell us your story.
Okay, hey guys. So I started out in the Baptist church. I was baptized when I was a little kid, and then I got confirmed in the Methodist church. We went to a Methodist church for whatever reasons, my parents, I don't know. But anyway, and then I was confirmed. I'm not gonna lie, growing up, I feel like, and I know hate's a strong word, although I do hate to say this, but I do feel like I lived in a consumer Christian home. And can
you define that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Just consuming everything but not giving. You know, and it's like,
well, how do you think of consumer?
Sure.
Think of consumer. What are consumers?
Sure.
They're people who go to movies and they sit in theaters, and it's all about just taking it in.
Oh, sorry.
Like you said, it's all about taking it in and nothing, and you're just there for the movie show experience.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, and growing up as well, like, I don't know. I gave it a lot of thought. But I do feel comfortable now sharing all this stuff. Being in the back of the car as a little girl, there'd be like a panhandler or whatever, what have you. I don't know. I'm from Austin, Texas, but anyway, there. And my dad would just be like, you just don't know everyone's story. Bottom line, and just so you guys already kind of, but it just breaks my heart. And I grew up with that, but I've learned to. I don't really know how to, I do believe in sharing the gospel when I can. But I guess just reverting back just to like my testimony, like who I am. So, when I went to college, so I graduated from Ole Miss in 2017, yada, yada. When I was there, and like Jordan was saying too, just not really having a lot of like accountability and just kind of, doing your own thing. I kind of, so, had fun, and it was hard to, so that was a rough time. I wish that I would have been more involved and, have Christ in my heart. Actually, during that time, I guess maybe I was a sophomore. I don't like to think about it, so I guess that's why I'm always kind of, I actually like rejected Jesus from my heart when I was like 19 years old. I think I told you that when I was like 19 or something like that. Just because I just felt like just nothing was, I just felt very alone,
Yeah.
And I was also going through, after that, because I didn't know at the time, when I graduated, I had found out about like just some things I was like kind of dealing with, and I won't really go into detail. Well, like kind of, I guess like mental health.
Yeah.
And with that, it's hard as well to, I don't know. I know this kind of sounds bad, guys, maybe, but just to prioritize sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when you're feeling so down sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But God, He's number one always.
Yeah.
That's really all I got.
Yeah. No, I think that's good to show, because I think what I hear just kind of captured in what you've shared so far is feeling like when you go to college, or even when you're like you talked about, like just being in the backseat of your car, and oftentimes, man, growing up, the backseat of the car, some of the worst fights happen, some of the whatever,
yes.
and so that's oftentimes where you may have questions, and questions get shut down. You have concerns, and concerns just kind of get swept under the table. You go to college and you feel alone, and you don't have anyone that reaches out to be community for you. And I can speak from this as someone who struggles with like chronic depression, anxiety. When you're stuck in a spot, you don't have the mental capacity or the will to go. Like people are just saying, well, you just gotta pick yourself up. And I'm like, you ain't never been in that place, brother. If you think you just pick yourself up, like it's another level of hopelessness. And when you're in that pit of hopelessness, you're constantly left being in your bed at night, just praying that someone would send you a text message to say, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Yeah. You're longing for someone to just bring you in. Yep. And that's what I hear a lot of what you're talking about. And at that place, when you're talking about you're a sophomore and you just felt lonely, and that's what drove you to reject Jesus, because it's that heart's cry and longing for someone to save you from this place, and constantly feeling like nothing's showing up for you. Does that feel like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Caleb.
No, of course. I just, I know sometimes it's, once you start talking about it, then it's like it all gets scattered and everything.
Right.
Like, what did I say? But I want you to know, like, it's heard.
Thank
and
you,
most
Caleb.
importantly, it's heard. Like, there's going to be people who listen to all of this and hear exactly what you're saying in every way that you say it. And that's what's so beautiful. And that's the thing that I want to be able to communicate to every single one of you, because you've heard so many different types of stories. And in each of their stories, I'm sure you've related to something, but what's most important is you have a story of your own where you may feel alone, you may feel outcasted, you may feel broken. And if that's you, there's a longing to belong somewhere. And that's often why many people reject church or reject what they grew up believing, because they're longing for belonging, and the place that they were supposed to belong rejected them. And I want you to know that if you feel that, you belong here. If you are weary and heavy burdened, you will have rest. Simply Love Jesus exists to show you what it means to love God and love people. And we are committed to being exactly who God has called us to be. And that means saying some hard things that people don't want to hear, saying things that people are too scared to say, saying things, and some of it may just be saying things that people just don't have the words to put it, but they feel it and they don't know how the words to articulate it. But I want you to know that you belong here. And I want you, and this is the most important thing that you will hear out of everything that we talk about. And this is my promise to you, that one day, everything that is wrong in this world and in your life will be made right through Jesus. And this is why Jesus is good news. That is the gospel. One day, everything in this world and in your life will be made right through Jesus. And I promise you, Jesus is coming back soon. And we believe that strongly, that Jesus is coming back soon and everything will be made right. We believe in a future where there is no more sorrow, no more pain. And these are just coming straight out of Revelation chapter 21, where God says, I am the beginning and the end. That God, look, I am among my people. There will be no more death or sorrow or pain. It literally uses the words, every tear will be wiped away. Come on, man. That's a world that we get to share together. And when you hear about all these different stories, I'm sure you can relate to every single one of them. And I want you to know that you're not alone. But I also want you to know that it's not going to stay that way, because this is the time. This is the time where there are Christians all over the country that are kind of like popping up like daisies. Like they're just, God is revealing specific people all over, people who are coming to these same realizations and these same revelations that we have all had, that we have all come here under the same common truth of who Jesus is and what Jesus has called us to do. And we want to show you what that looks like. Because the difference is there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube channels that talk about some of the things that we're talking about. There's a lot of people who want to write about things that we're writing about. But you want to know the one thing that we are going to do that those podcasts don't? We're giving solutions. A lot of them want to raise problems and say that there's something wrong. This isn't right. That's not right. But nobody's telling us how to fix it. And this is where that changes, because we are going to tell you how to fix it. And the simplest way that we can is to simply love Jesus. And we will begin to unfold what that means. We will unfold and we will talk more about what it means to simply love Jesus. And that is the difference between what you will find between Christians who are producing good fruit and bad fruit. Do they simply love Jesus? And we want to teach you what that means. And we want to invite you to simply love Jesus. But that requires us to have some hard conversations. Because there are many pastors who may be watching this, like, because all of us, we didn't just come out of nowhere and just decided we're just like these characters that came on a screen. We all have lives. We grew up. We have families. We all went to churches. We all have friends who are ministers. We all like whatever. And so because of that, some of them may be watching this and they may think to themselves, well, am I that bad Christian? I know there may be pastors who are watching this right now mainly because I sent it to them to watch, but but they may be watching this and thinking, well, am I the bad pastor? Am I the one who's created damage in the church? Am I the one? I don't know. I know some amazing pastors. Most of our friend group and people that we know, we love them and care about them. I can't answer that for you, but we're going to give you a challenge for you to find out for yourself. So what we're going to do, actually, Leah, would you mind handing me that blue notebook that was in my backpack? We want to do a challenge with you guys because, again, we're here to give solutions. We want to give practical support. There's actually also, sorry, I forgot to tell you this. Oh, yeah, thank you. You answer my next question. Thinking ahead, Leah. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a challenge together. And if you're watching this or you're listening to this, this is going to be doing this one-handed. This takes skills. Look, my notes. He's like looking at my notes. So what we want to do is we're going to give you guys a challenge. Because here's the question that we want to ask you. How far are you willing to go to follow Jesus? Whether you're a pastor, whether you're just a Christian, whether you're just a Christian, that was a bad thing to say, I'm sorry. I take that back. Whether you are a Christian, whether you're a minister, whether you're a pastor, you're a professor, maybe you're not even a Christian. And that question may be really easy for you to answer. How far I'm willing to go right now? You're like, not at all. But wherever you are at some level, if you want to know whether you are part of the problem or not, we're going to do a little challenge together for you to figure that out for yourself. And in the process, I would obviously encourage you to pray. Invite the Spirit to join in you with this process. I don't know why I do that. It's just so fun, It's because we're in Atlanta. It's just very fun to do. But we're gonna do a challenge for you to kind of do a self-assessment for yourself. A self-assessment for your. That's not. I can't. We're gonna do a challenge. And in this challenge, it'll be a great way for you to answer that question for yourself. And in the process, you will pray over this. You will think about this to yourself. But really, it's one question that it's going to help answer. How far are you willing to go to follow Jesus? Jesus also kind of raises this question, and we'll talk about that in a minute in scripture. But for the challenge, you're going to bust out a piece of paper. And at the top, you're gonna write the question that we'll be discussing. How far are you willing to go to follow Jesus? So on the top, you would write, how far are you willing to go to follow Jesus? That's my worst penmanship I've ever done. And what you're going to do is at the bottom of your paper, would you actually mind holding this for me? Just kind of holding it up for me. Thank you, sir. So what you're going to do, at the bottom of your paper, you're going to write Jesus. So what you're going to do next is on this paper, you are going to write out what is most important to you. From most important to least important. We'll put Jesus as his own little special box so you don't feel like you're putting Jesus last, because it serves his own little purpose, as Jesus always does. So you're going to list out your priorities. I'll list out mine for you. So my first one would be, let's do family. And then friends. And then I would do dreams, health, mine are very simple. So I really only have 4 priorities in my life, which is my family, my friends, my dreams, and my health. For you, it can be as long or it can be as short as you want. You might be raising up just a little bit. Hang on, I'm being very picky. I'm sorry. So you list out your priorities. It can be as long as you want, as short as you want, however, just what is most important to you. Some other examples you may put in: politics may be important to you. Your political beliefs, your money, your economy, your welfare. It can be your church is important to you. It could be your dog, Lulu, is important to you. I don't know why I chose Lulu. I don't even have a dog named Lulu, but I just imagine a poodle. And so I just think of like that person who like carries their poodle in their like their little case. And so it's my little flu-flu. Like, you know, like they're, I don't know. You know, you're 30 cats. I don't I'm going too far down the rabbit hole. Whatever is most important to you in your life, it can be as long as short as you want. And in this challenge, what you're going to do is you're then going to have Jesus draw an arrow to your first priority. So mine would kind of be bad examples, but this is just, you know, how I write it out. You will ask yourself, is Jesus more important than this? So let's say you had politics down there, or let's say you had money or health. Is Jesus more important than my health? I would say whatever Jesus says, is it more important? Yes. So I would cross it out and then I would just keep going. Is Jesus more important than my dreams? If I had a dream for my life, and one of my dreams is to be a full-time author, that's one of my dreams. Another one of my dreams is to get a PhD in philosophy. Another one of my dreams is to be fluent in Spanish because I'm half Puerto Rican and very proud of that. Another one of my dreams is to travel the world, you know. But if Jesus gave me a calling or told me something that would be in contrast with my dreams, who is more important? I would say Jesus is. Go up the list. Is Jesus more important than my friends? If following Jesus means friends of mine will reject me and friends of mine will cast me aside, who's more important? It's Jesus? Yeah. So I cross that out. Is he more important than my family? Yeah. Now, and you would just do this exercise. Now, you'll know, thank you, Durante. It's very simple exercise. And what I want you to take notice of as you're doing that exercise is really think about it. Don't just flippantly go, yeah, Jesus is more important than this. You know, put thought into it. And you will notice that the higher you go in your priorities, it should become increasingly more difficult to answer. And this is how you begin to start noticing whether you are part of the problem or not. And here's why. Because let's say you get to politics. Is following Jesus more important than who you vote for? Is following Jesus more important than even getting involved in politics? Your gun rights, your whatever, like your rights as free speech, your constitutional rights as an American. Is Jesus more important? Is it more important if following Jesus meant you forsake your own right to free speech? You forsake your own right to all these American dreams that you enjoy. How difficult is that for you to reconcile? And it's really important too. Notice maybe some things lower in your list are harder to answer than others. Just notice all the different priorities. Just really engage with it. Which ones were easier to cross out than others? Was it easier for you to cross out your friends than it was your money? Was it easier to cross out your own family than it was your politics? Is Jesus more important? How far are you willing to go to follow Jesus? Jesus poses this question to his disciples in the book of Luke. Luke chapter 14, Jesus says, a large crowd was following Jesus, and he turned to them and said, if you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. Your father, your mother, your wife and children, your brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. Now, that word hate there is not used in the same way we would use the word hate, but it is important. It's not this idea of hatred as in like you hate your own life. I hate myself. I'm stupid. Meh. No, that's not what he means by hate. This is going back again to this exact exercise. Contextually, that would be the exact thing that we're talking about. How far are you willing to go to follow Jesus? And what comes before it? Like just wrestle with that exercise. Wrestle with that. And it really ask yourself and just dive into it. Just the whole thing's an exercise. It's not just as linear as like, is he more important than this? And you cross it all off and you're done. No, again, like I said, did you find others were more of a struggle than some? Were you more surprised which one you're easier to cross off the list than others? Wrestle with that. And then pray about it. And then take a look at your own life. Because some of you may say, well, yeah, Jesus is more important than my political, stuff. And I had a harder time saying that Jesus was more important than my family. But how many of you have literally rejected your own family and let's say Thanksgiving, and you literally disown some of your own kids because of their lifestyle choices? Because they didn't believe, because maybe you grew up in a conservative family and maybe your son became a liberal. And so you decided to cast out your son for his liberal beliefs. Guess what? Your politics are more important than your family. And thus, they are more important than Jesus. So that's our challenge for you. And we would love to know in the comments, or you can also, if you're not watching this on YouTube, maybe you're listening to this on, Apple or Spotify, and you're just listening to this podcast, then we would love for you to follow us on Instagram and send us a DM and let us know how you interacted with that exercise. And maybe share it with other people, because I think it will really stretch your comfort zone a little bit. Jesus demands of us when he asks us, if you truly want to be good news to the world, you truly want to follow the person who is the giver of life, that requires you to put him above everything else. It requires for you to put everything else to the wayside. Everything else is held with an open hand, and he can do with it as he wills. And because it is no longer about just, what's more important in my life, because Jesus, when he comes into your life, he changes everything. He does not just let you sit on your dilly-dally doing whatever you want and just go into your regular 9-to-5 job, going home and watching Netflix, going to bed, waking up, doing the same thing. Jesus has something more important for your life. Jesus calls every single one of us. And I wonder what it would look like if we all asked ourselves that same question. How far are we willing to go to follow Jesus? How far are we willing to go so that the world may know that it is through him that they can have life? How far are we willing to go? I'll tell you how far I'm willing to go. I literally will go to the point that I would give up my own life so that other people may have life. If it comes to the point that I would resist the evil of this world so much with so much love, that's the difference between what real Christians, that's what we're here to talk about, real Christians. And there's a lot of people who say they're Christians, but they're not. And we're going to start defining that a lot more for you. We're not just going to cast it off into the wind and let you figure it out. No. We're going to be bold. And we are going to say what needs to be said. And we'll start drawing some lines in the sand a little bit for you. Following Jesus costs so much. But following Jesus is better than anything in the world, because it is about love, so much love, that you would literally allow the evil of this world and the evil that subjugates and enslaves the souls and the hearts of all people and all of creation, and creates the greed and the murder and the death that we see all around. That evil, the only way you defeat that is not through death. It is not fighting fire with fire. It is fighting death with life. It is fighting hate with love. It is fighting darkness with light. And the only way we can do that is if we choose to resist evil so much that wants to claw and tear people apart. And when we choose to do that, that is where life is given to the world. Jesus calls every single one of us to be good news. The gospel is not just something you believe in. The gospel is something you become through Jesus. It is not about preaching the gospel. It's about preaching and sharing and declaring good news. And not just declaring good news, being good news. That is what we want to share with you. And I wonder what it would look like if we just asked ourselves that question. How far am I willing to go to follow Jesus? Am I willing to take on hate from the rest of the world because I love people so much and it just doesn't make sense and it doesn't fit in their perfect little boxes and categories? I think we would have a church that people would be willing to follow. We would have a church people want to be part of. I think we would see communities jump out from everywhere because that is a irresistible grace. That is irresistible love. That is an irresistible community, an irresistible family. And when all people come together and join in that family, you are not just joining in a family, you're being part of a kingdom that is so dramatically different than what this world expects. It's not a kingdom that's built by presidents or by what we understand as kings. It's a kingdom that is built on life, a kingdom that is built on where everything is right, a kingdom that is built where you don't even have conversations like about equality or all these things are irrelevant because you love each other so much. It's a conversation that doesn't need to be had.
Right.
That is part of the kingdom of God. The kingdom of Jesus is the one who brought the kingdom of God here. And we are here to just proclaim the very same message that Jesus proclaimed. The kingdom of God is already here, and you have an opportunity to be part of that kingdom. You have an opportunity to be part of a family, and we want all of you listening to be part of a family that loves you so much and wants to help you live the way Jesus intended for you to live. And the way that you do that is by asking yourself one question. What is that question?
What does it mean to simply love Jesus?
That's right. What does it mean to simply love Jesus? The time is now. We are asking for people to be bold and brave and to stand up for what's right, to truly show the world what it means to love God and love people. And so we look forward to this journey we're about to go on together. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. We hope that this has been a challenge to you, but has also comforted you and encouraged you. And we ask that you continue to invest and join in this journey with us together. Consider sharing this with one person, because one day at a time, we're about to change the world. Have an amazing day, friends, and let us know how we can pray for you.
And I assume you're starting us off, right, Caleb?
Yeah.
All right, we are just double checking things.
We believe. I'm going to pull this up real quick before I continue. It's actually already here.
We're good. We're rolling.
All right, perfect. Welcome to the Simply Love Jesus podcast. I hope you're having an amazing. Well, actually, okay, there you go. Welcome to the Simply Love Jesus podcast, where that old intro is coming in on me. That old intro. Welcome.
Got it.
Okay.
I think you should keep all this in, by the way.
I will. This is gonna be bloopers later. There we go. All right.